Welcome to the Only One Shot Golf Podcast. I'm Jim Gallagher Jr. Don't forget to subscribe to wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of Only One Shot. That's available at Amazon, written by VJ Trolio, the teaching professional at Old Waverly Golf Club. Special thanks to Steve Azar for allowing us to use his music, and you can find Steve at steveazar.com. Well, the men's regional sites have been set. The teams have been appointed to where they're going, and so we're going to do a little kind of a preview. We've got one of the coaches, Ryan Cabbage of Charlotte, and they'll be going to Yale. But let's start opening with the Norman Jimmy Austin Golf Club. Oklahoma will be the host there. It was supposed to be at Alabama, but the golf course in Tuscaloosa wasn't in condition to play. And Alabama actually was ranked in the top 35, I believe it was, but did not make the 500 winning percentage for the season, so they weren't even eligible, which is really a sad thing because they had a really good team. But so that regional was set to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's the 1 seed, the 2nd seed's Texas, followed by Auburn, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Louisville, Missouri, San Diego State, Utah, Kent State, Kansas State, UT Martin, and Rider. And that's a really solid regional when you look at that. All top 5 teams there. Missouri really had a nice run at the SEC in the match play. Louisville's got a good team as well. San Diego State was starting to play some pretty good golf. So that's going to be a tough regional. 5 teams at each regional get out, and 1 low individual who is not on a team will make it out. Then we'll look at the Palm Beach Gardens regional. Vandy, the SEC champs, back-to-back champs, will be the number 1 seed there, followed by the Florida Gators. Notre Dame, who's had a really good season, had a great fall. Florida State, Purdue, New Mexico, South Florida, Little Rock, who made it to the NCAAs last year, College of Charleston, Indiana Hoosiers, San Diego, Davidson, Loyola Marymount, and Charleston Southern. Those are the 14 teams there. Columbus at Ohio State. Oklahoma State will be the number 1 seed there. Last time they were playing there, they won that regional, and actually, believe they won the NCAA that year. So they've had another good season, another good year, top 3 or 4 team in the country as well. I think they're ranked number 2 in the country. Georgia Tech had a really good run this spring. They're the 2 seed there, followed by Arkansas, Clemson, East Tennessee State, Ohio State. Watch out for them on their home golf course. Duke, Northwestern, Florida Gulf Coast, San Francisco, Kentucky, Wright State, and Southern Illinois will round out that regional. And then we'll head over to Stockton, California, where Arizona State will be the number 1 seed, followed by Washington, Stanford. The LSU Tigers will head up from Baton Rouge, Oregon, Nevada, Liberty, BYU, UAB, Houston, UC Davis, Denver, Abilene Christian. What a great story. Tom Shaw and his team winning their conference for the first time, and they get to make their regional trip out there to California and Weber State. As I mentioned, Yale. We'll get into that regional here in a second, but let's go to Bryan, Texas A&M, where Pepperdine, defending national champions, will be the 1 seed. Texas A&M, the Georgia Bulldogs, the Tennessee Volunteers, Kansas, Arizona, Michigan State, SMU, Boise State, Oregon State, Colorado State, Southeast Louisiana, and Texas Southern will round out that one. That'll be a good regional as well. And we're talking about the Yale regional up in New Haven, Connecticut. And we've got Ryan Cabbage from Charlotte. He's going to be following up here, and we'll have a nice conversation with him. They will be the 6th seed there. But the 1 seed is North Carolina, followed by Texas Tech, Wake Forest, ACC champs, Illinois, Big Ten champs again, NC State, as I mentioned, Charlotte, North Florida, Georgia Southern, Mississippi State Bulldogs, Virginia, UCF, Seton Hall, Yale, the host team, and Sacred Heart. But let's get Ryan Cabbage on the line and hear about their conference win and what they expect when they get to the regionals up at Yale. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome back to the podcast Mr. Ryan Cabbage from Charlotte, the men's golf coach there. He's back in Season 4, Episode 16, and that was out in September of 2021. Ryan, welcome back on the podcast.
Thank you, Jim. Look forward to spending some time with you once again.
Well, you all have had a great season, and let's get everybody kind of caught up. You actually found out where you're going in the regionals. You're going to Yale, up there, a beautiful golf course, a Charles Blair McDonald, Seth Rayner golf course, and might be a little strange in May with the weather, but you're up there in a 6th seed. You're in with North Carolina, Texas Tech, Wake Forest, Illinois, NC State. Of course, you are the 6th seed. North Florida, Georgia Southern, Mississippi State, Virginia, UCF, Seton Hall, Yale, and Sacred Heart. So I counted out of the 14 teams, 10 of them from the South. So it might be a little bit of an adjustment weather-wise for you guys when you head up north.
I think anytime you travel there and you start seeing bent grass fairways, we see bent grass greens throughout the course of the year, but it'll be a little bit unique for some of those southern teams to head up there. But I've been to Yale before. I was there with an Auburn team in 2004 for an NCAA regional, so I've got some familiarity with the golf course, and was actually able to find a couple of yardage books from back in the day. So we'll be prepared and excited to be in the NCAA Championship. And we would have been happy wherever the committee chose to send us. But I think to be able to stay on the East Coast is certainly a good thing, for us.
What can you tell us about the golf course? What are some of the kind of unique features? I know Seth Rayner, some of the greens and bunkering. What are some of the things you remember from the golf course?
Greens and the bunkering are probably the two things that stick out the most. I know there are a few sort of blind tee shots that you got to make sure that you really get good targets off the tee and get comfortable with that. So that's something that we'll try to do as much research as we can, before the practice round, so our guys are prepared and kind of know what to expect on each of those and really get set with those targets. But like you said, primarily greens, bunkering, and then we'll get to work on some of those tee shots and things. But it's a good golf course to be a good challenge for all of the kids and a fun golf course to play.
How many practice rounds do y'all get? Do you get one or do you get two when you get to the regionals?
We'll get the one practice round. So Saturday the 14th will be a travel day for us, and then the one practice round on Sunday the 15th, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday competition days. So we'll spend the majority of the next week trying to gather as much information as we can. None of our guys have seen the golf course, but we just want to try to get them as comfortable as we possibly can with those sight lines off tees, what to expect in terms of greens and kind of chipping areas and things like that, so that practice round is as effective as it can be in preparation for when the bell rings on that Monday morning.
Is there anything you can do at home to kind of prepare for that? Any way you can practice around your facility? There are different golf courses there. It's some different grasses, but is there anything you guys can kind of do to maybe get ready for that?
Yeah, the one advantage I think we do have, we don't have bent grass fairways here in Charlotte, but we're not too far removed from some golf courses with bent grass fairways.
Okay.
And so we'll probably make a couple of day trips just a little bit north of Charlotte to try to get on some golf courses with bent grass fairways that'll make the guys feel a little bit more comfortable with that. So we are fortunate to not be too far away from some bent grass fairways, and so I'll do a little research on that. We'll find a couple spots to get these guys out of town to play, and again, just trying to create as much comfort as we possibly can with these guys as we get ready to get up there.
What are finals? Because that's always, I know a lot of teams are. I know on the women's side, I think several teams are in finals while they're playing, and they play the week before y'all do. But what's your final schedule for y'all?
Begin exams today, and that'll go over the course of the next 5 or 6 days. But we're fortunate that when we travel to Yale, we're completely finished with school, so the focus can be solely on the golf. Like I said, there are some moving parts between now and that travel day with exams and things like that. But the good news is we don't have that. We don't have exams kind of over us while we're there. So the focus can be just on the golf. And these guys are they're focused enough and disciplined enough. They take care of exams, get their work done. Even during final exams with their golf games. And then we'll be prepared and ready to go when we get to Connecticut.
That's a big advantage to be done with school. I remember us, of course, that's 1,000 years ago, but we were, like you said, taking finals, trying to prepare for that, trying to get ready for, and they didn't have regionals when I played. It solely was picked by a committee, which that can always be a little dicey. But I like the way they do it with the regionals now, and a lot of teams get opportunities. You hate to be that team that just misses out, but y'all have had a pretty solid year. The start of the fall, You went out to Duke, kind of finished in the middle of the pack, and then won the next event. But you didn't play a lot in the fall. You kind of heavied up in the spring. Did you plan on doing that? What was the plan behind that, kind of having a light fall and a big, heavy spring?
Had a little bit of a unique situation with Connor Goff. Connor's a freshman on this year's team. He's already played on a Walker Cup team for the GB&I team. So Connor early enrolled in January of 21, but in doing so, there were some academic credits that didn't come over. So Connor was ineligible until January of 22. So he wasn't able to play for us in the fall. Knowing, obviously, his talent level, we mentioned playing on a Walker Cup team already. He's got a laundry list of wins in his junior and amateur career over in Europe. But knowing that he was going to kind of come on board in January of 22, we did only play the 3 events in the fall. I just didn't want to put our program in a situation where we played kind of what I felt like without the full arsenal of our lineup. And so we did only play the 3 events in the fall. Credit to these guys, though. We were pretty average at Duke. We did win at River Run, and then we finished second in our final event of the fall up at East Tennessee State. And so we were able to do what we needed to do in the fall. And then a little bit of a slow start in the spring down at TPC and kind of got wind blown a little bit in the Bahamas. Kind of had a little we had a little meeting, coming out of the Bahamas before we went out to Palm Springs. Kind of got some things back in line, and then these guys have been really good from basically the time we got to Palm Springs to right now. We've been pretty solid throughout the course of the spring. Picked up some real quality wins in a lot of events, and hopefully we continue trending in the right direction and kind of peaking at the right time as we get ready to go to Yale, and then hopefully on to Greyhawk.
You mentioned several different places to play in the country, and I've talked to several coaches. I know when COVID was restrictions were there, you were very limited to where you could travel. Now it's a little more open as far as the traveling, and you've gone to Wyoming, the Bahamas. You mentioned that. Do you do that in a conscious effort, just in case you maybe have to go play a regional there or the NCAAs or somewhere? Do you make that when you kind of look at, or how do you make your schedule at maybe the beginning of the year?
With everything kind of having an eye toward the NCAA Championship. Number one, as you just mentioned, locations and travel and things like that. Mentioned going out to Palm Springs. Granted, that's not Northern California, where that NCAA site will be in Stockton, but it still gives the guys the opportunity to travel out there, get adjusted to time changes and things like that, course conditions, so on and so forth. So we try to set our schedule up that way so that these guys are prepared for whichever NCAA regional we may be sent to. The second part of that is the level of competition. Making sure that we have the opportunities to see, like in our case, we're going to see Chapel Hill. At this regional, we've seen Vanderbilt. We've seen, the best teams in the country throughout the course of the year, so that when you show up, let's say Sunday morning at that practice round at Yale, you're not looking around going, oh gosh, do you see that team over there? Do you see that team over there? It'll kind of be old hat for these guys, in our program and on this team, because we've played against and we've played with the best teams in the country throughout the course of the season. So again, you hear me talk a lot about trying to create normalcy and keeping everything consistent for this NCAA regional. I think that starts all the way back with scheduling, with course conditions and scheduling with the level of competition, so that ultimately we do everything we can to just make the week of an NCAA regional as normal as possible. And then hopefully you make the week at Greyhawk as normal as possible as well. I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do as coaches is to try to create an environment and treat this week as we do any other week, whether it's a September fall event or whether it's an NCAA regional coming up in May.
I think the toughest thing, though, is you want to play against that great competition, and that's important. but you also have to have the 500 rule where you have to win over 50% and beat 50% of the teams. Alabama, who is ranked in the top 30, 40, whatever, would make it probably by ranking, but because they didn't win and go over the 500 rule, they weren't eligible to even make it to regionals. They were supposed to host it. The golf course wasn't ready, so they had to switch it to Oklahoma. So that's also in the balance. How do you balance that? Because you want great competition, but yet, and you've got a good team, but for a lot of these teams, they fell short because they didn't make it to the 500 mark.
You always hate to see that for guys that have good teams, like you mentioned with Jay Sewell and his program at Alabama, Mike McGraw at Baylor, tremendous teams that just happen to fall below 500. And so as a coach, it is something that you always have to kind of factor in there, because you want to put your kids against the best competition, and you have to do that in order to get your ranking where it needs to be an at-large in case you don't win your conference championship. But at the same time, there's two parts to that criteria for making the NCAA championship, and the other is making sure you're above 500. For us, we talk about that level of competition playing against the best teams in the country. I do always try to include maybe one, maybe two events each season where you feel like if you play well, you're going to be able to pick up some wins. So it kind of takes a little bit of the stress off of the 500 rule and trying to stay away from that just a little bit. You don't want the stress, but there's that fine line there between having a strong enough schedule and at the same time kind of protecting your program, from 500 and making sure that you do pick up the win. So it's there's one guy on one shoulder saying, schedule this event, and there's the other guy on the other shoulder talking about making sure that you kind of protect your program with that. But we're fortunate to play well enough, and these guys did such a tremendous job that we kind of took care of the 500 early on, and then it just became, okay, where can we get to in the national rankings, which these guys did a good job with that as well.
Do you like that 500 rule? Because to me, as an outsider, it almost takes away from playing against the best. It kind of keeps you from playing against the best. What do the coaches think of the 500 rule?
The more coaches that I talked to, it began, I want to say, Jim, I think it was 2009 was the first year of that 500 rule. Interestingly enough, the very first year, I was an assistant at Auburn, and we missed an NCAA regional because of 500. And we had a situation here at Charlotte, I want to say that was probably 2014, that we missed we fell one win below 500. We needed to finish third or better at our conference championship. We finished fourth by 2 shots. Our ranking was fine. We were going to be in by ranking and fell below 500. So I've had a couple of instances that I didn't like that 500 rule a whole lot. But in the big picture, I think now, 12, 13 years later, I think most coaches have adjusted to that. It has its goods and it has its bads. I think on the good side, it creates more opportunities for maybe non-Power 5 schools or things like that to have the opportunity to compete against, the better teams around the country at least once or twice a year. With that, like you said, the downside can be that you do have to soften your schedule just a little bit and maybe not play against the absolute best teams in the country week after week after week. But it does provide opportunity for other teams, that might not otherwise have that. I go back to those times at Auburn prior to 2009, and it was probably similar when you played at Tennessee. We traveled almost in little pockets. You would see the same 12 to 15 teams seem like week after week after week. And 1 week we were in Birmingham, and the next week we were in Dalton, Georgia at the Carpet Capitol, and the next week we were at the NCAA preview. And we never really saw any other teams from around the country. I think it kind of skewed the rankings a little bit with that as well, because it was hard to be ranked outside the top call it 30 to 35 in the country because you never played against teams that were ranked outside of that. So I think that's another positive. It gives opportunities for, maybe a team like ourselves at Charlotte to be able to compete in those weeks against the best teams. And if we're able to kind of clip off some of those top 25 teams and top 10 teams in the country, it goes a long way with the rankings. So it has its, kind of the pluses and the positives. It does have a little bit of the downside sometimes, but overall, I think as coaches around the country, we've kind of figured out that, okay, this is what it is, and we've got to do with it the best we can.
You mentioned the spring top 5 finishes against all those great teams. How much confidence does that give your team, when they can compete against the best? Because I've heard some coaches use this as kind of motivation. I don't know that you guys need to because you've got a pretty solid team, but they go and say, hey, those are the teams that didn't recruit you or didn't maybe look at you, and they use that as kind of a motivational factor. I've heard some smaller schools do that with when they go up against an SEC team. But how much confidence does that give you, or did that give you, beating those teams when you went into the conference tournament? Because you were on a pretty decent roll going into there.
It certainly helps. When you're able to beat some of those teams. This is a pretty confident team that we have. I think they felt comfortable, and we've got a unique group right now in that, 4 of these guys have been in the lineup for the majority of their time here. So they've continually look at Ben Woodruff and Carson Owenby for 3 years, and DJ Park for a couple of years, Matt Sharkstein, as a 5th-year guy. They played against that level of competition, and I think they kind of trust their ability, that they know they're good enough, but certainly when you're able to go do it and you're able to beat some of those, top 5 team in the country or top 10 team in the country and some top 25 teams in the country, I think success breeds success, and you can continue to build on that positive momentum. And I think for us, for this spring in particular, as I've mentioned before, coming out of that Bahamas trip, we weren't playing very well. And I think, like I said, after a little bit of a meeting, we kind of got things back in line. And so when you do that, and then you see success immediately after that with a win in Palm Springs, and then you kind of continue to build on that. The top, I guess we finished 5th or 6th at Linger Longer against a really, really good field down at Lake Oconee. So there's as much momentum coming out of that adversity when you find success that I think probably played as big a role as anything, because the guys kind of then look around and go, okay, we're back on track. We're moving in the direction we need to move in. And then fortunately for us, that kind of snowballed in the right direction throughout the course of the spring. But no doubt when you see those best teams in the country, in the field week after week, these guys accept that challenge. And I think for any non-Power 5, you do have a little bit of that chip on your shoulder with, okay, let's go see where we are. Where do we stack up? And let's go compete and see what happens.
Isn't that funny how you just mentioned the chip on your shoulder? Scott Limbaugh at Vandy, who I just finished a podcast with, he has his team with the same mentality, and they've been a top 10 team 7 out of 8 years. It's always interesting how different coaches go to motivating, but so many conferences are going now to medal and then playing match play. What adjustments, without giving us too much of your strategy, but how does the mental approach from you as a coach telling your players, how do you get them to change from that medal mentality into the match play? Because unfortunately, we don't play as much match play here in the States as they do in a lot of places.
When we went to Texarkana for our conference championship, was not looking ahead to the match play portion. The guys knew that obviously we're going to need to win 2 matches on Thursday to win a conference championship. Well, as a coach, you get a little bit concerned of looking past 3 rounds of stroke play. And we didn't play very well in 3 rounds of stroke play. We were fortunate to slide in there in that 4th spot. I felt like our team, we were comfortable all week knowing that, okay, we haven't played very well, but when we do, we're going to take care of what we need to take care of in stroke play. But it's always a concern of looking forward. I don't think these guys looked past the stroke play. It certainly wasn't a slight on any of the teams in our conference or anything like that. We knew the depth of our conference. We knew the strength of the conference going into Texarkana. We just didn't play very good golf for 3 rounds of stroke play. I think what happened there, though, is and every team has that opportunity. The teams that don't finish first in stroke play, the 2, 3, the 4 for us in Texarkana, the 2 through 8 at Sea Island in the SEC Championship, there's almost new life there. You can kind of reset, and you have that opportunity of, okay, boys, we've got another opportunity now. We're 2 matches away from winning a conference championship. And so I think it almost breathes new life into the kids when, whatever you want to call it, you dodge that bullet in stroke play or whatever it might be, and then you can kind of reset and kind of go from there. I don't know that our kids really changed our approach from stroke play to match play. We kind of changed a couple things around with our lineup. Not necessarily the 5 guys that were going to be playing from stroke play to match play. But we put Matt Sharkstein out in the very first match. You and I spent some time together at the U.S. Amateur. Matt's obviously had some success in match play. DJ Park in match 2. DJ's going to be our conference player of the year. Connor Goff, we talked about the Walker Cup, English Am champion. He's obviously had some success in match play, goes out in match 3. So we felt like, I don't know if you want to call it, let's try to bull rush these guys right out of the gate. But we kind of reconfigured some things from years past going into match play at our conference championship and kind of changed a little bit around this year. And fortunately, we were able to get a good win against a Florida Atlantic team that almost made the NCAA field. I think they were one of the first couple teams out, but a really good team, and then to beat UT San Antonio in the championship match. So just happy for these guys and excited to get that conference championship.
Yeah, with 5 guys, it's they always talk the Ryder Cup because the strategy of who you put out first or last. But with 5 guys, I mean, I don't know if there's the strategy. I kind of like putting your better players out there first. You might want to leave one for the end, but get the points as you can. I mean, they may put their best player against them, but if you're going to beat them, you're going to have to beat them anyway. With only 5 guys, you got to win those 3 matches. So I kind of like that, putting my players. And you may talk to the players; they may feel more comfortable out there as well, as opposed in that anchor position. But
we did. That was one of the things that we talked about before we even went to Texarkana. And again, we're talking about match play, but at the same time still focusing and knowing what we need to do. But trying to, again, create that sense of normalcy. I didn't want to get past round 3 of stroke play and then start trying to figure out what we were going to do in match play. So we sat down and we talked about it, and we talked about kind of putting those 3 guys out front. I think some of that, you look at a guy like Matt Sharkstein, just the little things. Matt doesn't need a whole lot of time to warm up, and a guy like Ben Woodruff needs a little bit more time to kind of get zoned in, and he goes through some things pre-round and all that kind of stuff to get prepared. So him being in a 4th match, just little things like that. But we talked about those things on the front end, so our guys knew exactly what we were doing before we ever got to Texarkana. Those things were talked about in Charlotte 3 days before we even traveled to Texarkana. And so, again, I don't know right, wrong, or indifferent. It worked out for us this week, but that's kind of the way we approached it. None of the years we've gone to Texarkana, I know some coaches look at it and try to get guys matched up against other players or whatever. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure all that out. So we just kind of go out in the order that we feel is best for us, on that given day. And you're going to have to play well, regardless, on a week that, a day after the NCAA selection shows. And there's a lot of talk about who was sent where and this and that. Well, at the end of the day, you're going to have to play well at an NCAA regional to advance. And it's the same thing with match play. You're going to have to play well to win a match no matter who you play. And so, let's just put them out there and see what happens.
You mentioned the selection show and the guys sitting around. You know you're in. You won the conference. Take us through those emotions and what it's like in that room when you find out where you're finally getting to go.
Yeah, we had a really cool experience yesterday. We were over in our athletic complex, and we had some athletic administration in there. We had some parents that drove down to spend that afternoon with our guys. Robert Woodard, our baseball coach here at Charlotte, they finished practice, before 4 o'clock. So they walked over, and we had those guys in there. That's a team that played in the NCAA Baseball Championship last year. And there's kind of a connection between our golf program and our baseball program. Ron Sanchez, our basketball coach, was there yesterday. So it just created a really fun environment. It's always, more fun when you're in there and you know that you're in. It's just a matter of which site are you going to go to. But it was more of a kind of a celebration, for these guys. And I've told them, many times that, making the NCAA championship field is not easy. There are a lot of really good coaches and a lot of really good players around the country. And certainly we can't take those things for granted. I don't think anyone takes for granted making the NCAA championship field. And so I think it should be celebrated. It's hard to do. And so we had a fun day yesterday, with the guys, and it was cool to see our name pop up. We got a little bit of airtime there on the Golf Channel with kind of a live look in, with our guys. So that was fun. But yeah, it was just kind of a celebration and kind of, give these guys a little pat on the back for being able to accomplish something that's really special, and then we immediately go now into let's get back and let's get focused and get ready to go to Yale.
How cool is it to have those other programs, all those other coaches and from the other sports of your school kind of in there with you? That has to be kind of a really cool atmosphere to know that they're behind you and they're part of that, because golf, as we all know, now it's on TV, it's becoming more popular, but it has to be pretty cool to know those other sports are backing you and excited for you as well.
It was a lot of fun, and I think that's always a neat thing. And we talked back in August, and I kind of grew up in an athletic family. Yep. And in a sports environment, so I've always sort of felt a connection to, our football coaches and our baseball and our basketball coaches or whatever. And I've got some great friendships. Will Healy, our football coach here, I had lunch with him a couple of days ago, and he actually is playing the member guest at Baker's Bay. So he couldn't be with us yesterday, but he would have been on the front row yesterday, just excited for our kids. But, I think it's, that connection between athletes. I think there's an appreciation, and I know this was the same way for you at Tennessee. I think all student athletes appreciate what each other, what they do, the time management and the work ethic and everything that they have to do to be successful in their sport. And it doesn't matter if it's, men's and women's tennis or if it's soccer or if it's football. There's a lot of things that go into being successful. And I think that appreciation from student athlete to student athlete and from coach to coach, I think is always going to be there. And we're fortunate here at Charlotte to have a good connection between a lot of our athletic programs. And we've had some good success. I mentioned baseball there, and our women's basketball team made the NCAA field, men's soccer. So we certainly, we've been to some NCAA championships here with multiple sports, and it's just neat to have that connection with a lot of other coaches and a lot of student athletes, here in all of our programs at Charlotte.
It's a pretty cool time to be at Charlotte. It's a pretty cool time to be part of Ryan Cabbage's golf team. Good luck up in Yale. I like your chances up there. I think y'all are going to do some damage. Hopefully I get to see you at Scottsdale. I got moved from the studio. I'll be doing the live golf, so I hope to see you out in Scottsdale at Greyhawk. But good luck to you May 16th through 18th up at New Haven, up at Yale.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate everything that you do. I will say that I do feel good about these guys. I feel like that ultimately if we go there and we play well, then everything else is going to take care of itself. And so that'll be our primary focus, and I hope to be able to bump into you at Greyhawk in just a few weeks.
All right, buddy. Good luck to you. Safe travels.
Thanks so much. Take care. Appreciate all you do.
driving this 75 Cadillac. I've got the top road back on a southern born and cloudy day, down a long stretch of highway. I know this day's gonna be my friend, long as I'm here, baby, in the flat lane.